At the inauguration of John Kennedy, he said, "Man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life." And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. And he, in leadership demonstrating a bold defiance and courage, concluded, "In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility," he said. "I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world." And in that spirit, in the weeks leading up to Palm Sunday, we filed an action in the Alexandria Circuit Court to challenge the constitutionality of Executive Order 53, the emergency public safety order first issued on March 17, 2020 by Ralph Northam, which directly and effectively closed any business not designated as necessary and which implicitly suspended all church services, symbolically designating those places of worship as non-essential functions during the most holy of their observed holidays and during a time of international health emergency. The symbology and nuance of these momentous actions in politics and diplomacy are probably as esoteric to many local faith leaders as the exegesis and eschatology are esoterica to a politician, creating a fog of obscurity during these times in which we are embattled against what has been called an invisible enemy. But in electoral politics and even in international relations, those are the great existential questions to ponder, which write the legacies and histories for future generations who will not long remember and probably will forget what we did. At a critical time of choice between liberty or death, freedom or security. You may have noticed quite a few people are now wearing masks for protection against an invisible enemy, which has been called a novel coronavirus, a medical term for which most of us are probably found lost in obfuscation. But if you can, for just a moment, take a mental journey back to your youth in a simpler and more peaceful time, sitting in a classroom learning science. You may recall how a man named Galileo used a primitive lens to look up into the heavens and uncovered scientific explanations for some of the great mysteries of his day. Marvels such as rings around Saturn, in discoveries so momentous that the foundations of monarchies and the Roman Catholic Church felt the seismic tremor. And you may recall that not long after, a man by the name of Robert Hooke took that same technology to examine pieces of cork, which he discovered relics of life that form the foundations of cellular biology, before unimaginable and invisible to the human eye. Still later, around the same time that Madame Curie delved deeper, discovering the existence of subatomic X-rays towards the end of the 19th century, two men, Dmitri Ivanovsky and Martinus Bejerink, discovered subcellular particles called viruses, which were found to cause illnesses in plants and animals. But until a recent and novel coronavirus, a type of virus named for the crown-like spikes around its body, scientists had only discovered 219 that were harmful to man, despite being the most abundant biological particle in the world, and far fewer have been found to threaten harm to both man and animals. And that is significant. But the important note here is not the science of biology, virology, or epidemiology, but rather the empirical fact that a virus, no matter how virulent and devastating in particle mass, is very small. So small that it cannot be seen with a powerful microscope. And if you happen to notice that you had not yet died from asphyxiation in your homemade mask to prevent infection from a novel coronavirus, it is because most every fabric made by man, despite a solid appearance to those of us who are large, have microscopic holes that are no barrier to smaller particles, which is why medical masks and protective masks that are worn by professionals in industries that require such protection are specifically designed to provide an effective barrier to those biological agents. And in preparing pleadings for litigation, we uncovered a document produced by the Centers for Disease Control that may explain why medical health professionals might therapeutically suggest a panacea during a time of pandemonium in pandemic crisis. By early March, recognizing the potential for widespread panic, medical professionals at the CDC anticipated that persons desperately seeking to save themselves might create shortages in medical equipment, critical medical equipment that hospitals and healthcare providers would need to combat the infection on the front lines in persons suffering from the devastating effects of a severe acute respiratory illness, and specifically recommended at that time cancellations of non-elective surgeries as well as withdrawing the availability of medical masks for hospital visitors. These droplets are not airborne, suspended in a gas, and do not persist in the air, but rather being heavier than air will fall to the ground just like the Titanic sunk to the bottom of the ocean after being expelled from an infected person who, consistent with symptoms, is sneezing or coughing. Aboard the Princess Diamond, a cruise ship that set out from a port in Yokohama, Japan, CDC researchers discovered traces of a viable coronavirus infection persisting on the surfaces of objects beyond 11 days. And if the infectious biological agent is on a surface that you can touch, a mask of whatever fashion will not prevent you from touching it or touching your face thereafter, which scientists have estimated we do unconsciously over 3,000 times per day. Many leaders unconscionably have exploited this crisis for financial and political gain, but they place your life and health at risk when they fail to inform you of the empirical facts, relying upon your faith in them as your elected leaders. And by fate or providence, this international calamity has given to the Commonwealth of Virginia a great opportunity to be that city atop a hill and beacon of freedom for the world. For despite the continued emphasis on numbers of persons infected, it is an empirical fact that hospitalization and mortality rates are only a small fraction that result from that. And unlike localities like St. John Parish, southeast of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or even New York City, the Commonwealth of Virginia is blessed, truly blessed in this Lenten season, with amongst the lowest incidents of hospitalization and death, providing an opportunity for this great state not to try to save ourselves hunkered down in homes, but to help others beyond ourselves and beyond our borders. John Kennedy noted of his Commonwealth of Massachusetts before assuming the highest office in the land, "It can be truly sad that no man can ever be mindful of the contributions which this state has made to our national greatness. Its leaders have shaped our destiny long before the great republic was born. Its principles have guided our footsteps in times of crisis as well as in times of calm. Its democratic institutions, including most of the articles in the Bill of Rights, have served as beacon lights for other nations as well as our sister states. For what Pericles said of the Athenians has long been true of this Commonwealth. We do not imitate, for we are truly a model for others." History reminds us of the cost of self-indulgence and the transforming power of a greater vision looking to our higher angels. In this precipitous time, as we approach Easter and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, we must yet dare to stand on our tippy toes to accept the challenge and the grace that has been granted to us, and with liberty, honor, and excellence, by God, we shall make America great again. Honest. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.